The village of Milford sat quietly between rolling hills and worn-out paths that no one famous ever walked. No monuments, no spotlights, just routine and rain. Among its cobbled streets lived a man who felt invisible in the world and utterly disconnected from anything great. His name was Elias Gray. Elias was a watchmaker, and not a particularly successful one. At 39, he spent his days repairing forgotten timepieces in a crumbling shop inherited from his grandfather. His neighbors pitied him with the kind of sympathy people reserve for those who gave up without anyone noticing. No family, no bold ambition, gears, screws, and tick-tocks that didn't inspire much else. But what the town didn't know, what even Elias didn't know yet, was that everything was about to change. All it would take was a whisper. One ordinary Tuesday, Elias wandered into the dusty attic above his shop, searching for a replacement spring. What he found instead was a warped, leather-bound book tucked inside a cracked wooden chest. Embossed on the cover in faded gold, "Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill." He nearly tossed it aside, thinking it was another hollow promise. He had seen dozens of success books lying around the back room of his father's old storage, never read, never needed. But something in the spine of this one held firm, like it was waiting for someone to finally hear it. That night, Elias read, until the morning birds took over the silence. It was not the title or the money talk that gripped him, it was the chapter about faith. Not religious faith, but the kind you cultivate like fire. Self-belief, so unshakable that the world eventually bends to its heat. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Faith is a state of mind that may be induced by autosuggestion." That sentence struck Elias like thunder. A state of mind, induced, could belief in yourself actually be built? He had nothing to lose, so he decided to experiment. For 30 days, Elias followed Hill's instructions to the letter. Each morning and night, he stood in front of a mirror and told himself what he would become, not what he was. I, Elias Gray, will become a man of purpose. I believe in my ability to create something meaningful in this world. At first, it felt foolish. He smirked, he cringed. But by day 15, something subtle changed. His shoulders straightened, his words sounded less like hope and more like truth. By day 21, he looked people in the eye. By day 30, Elias Gray felt a strange new rhythm pulsing through his life. It wasn't arrogance, it was certainty. The transformation wasn't magic. His debts still existed, his shop still creaked, but his mind no longer buckled under the weight of what if. He walked differently, he asked bigger questions. And one day, while fixing an antique German timepiece, Elias got an idea so clear and powerful that he dropped his screwdriver. He wouldn't just repair watches, he would reinvent them. What if time could be personal? What if a watch could carry your beliefs? Elias began sketching. He designed a new kind of timepiece, one that would chime not only at the hour, but whisper a custom affirmation set by the wearer. Every hour, it would reinforce the message the owner most needed to hear. Believe in yourself. Your future is shaped by your thoughts. You were born to do more. He called it the resolve. Elias had no marketing degree, no business plan, and barely enough money to source parts. But what he did have was faith, not in a product, but in himself. He walked into a local makers expo, trembling but smiling, and showed his prototype. Most people walked past, but one didn't. A woman in a sharp blue suit, with quiet eyes and a name tag that read Aria Sloan, Venture Innovations. She listened, she tried it on. It whispered, "You are capable of everything you dream." She paused. "How much do you need to make 10 of these?" And just like that, Elias Gray, the man once invisible, stepped into his own future. Because faith is not a feeling you wait for. It is a choice you declare. And it starts with a whisper. Elias Gray never imagined his life would change so quickly. Just weeks ago, he was counting pennies to fix broken gears. Now, he was sitting in a quiet corner office inside a downtown co-working space in the city, staring at the prototype of the Resolve, his whispering watch, and a check for $5,000. Signed by Aria Sloan. "Make 10 of them," she had said. "If they work, we'll talk bigger." Those words echoed like a promise and a dare. But belief, no matter how strong, doesn't silence fear entirely. It simply teaches you to keep moving anyway. Every day, Elias wrestled with doubt. What if the idea wasn't scalable? What if people thought it was gimmicky? What if this was a lucky accident and not a new life? He kept reminding himself, faith is not waiting for fear to vanish, it's acting while it trembles in your chest. So, Elias acted. He ordered parts from small suppliers in Germany, Japan, and a tiny town in Illinois. He spent sleepless nights assembling mechanisms so delicate, one mistake could ruin hours of work. He wasn't a designer. He wasn't a salesman. But he was now something far more dangerous, a man who believed in himself. Each watch was hand-assembled, each message custom-etched into the whispering mechanism. He didn't just want people to wear time. He wanted them to hear courage. One whispered, "You are not your past." Another said, "Every setback is a setup." And another simply said, "Keep going." It wasn't just a product, it was a movement in its infancy. But belief is always tested. Just days before the delivery deadline, Elias received a box of gears that were misaligned. The watches wouldn't tick. The whispers distorted into static. The panic nearly crippled him. He paced his shop floor, whispering to himself, I am a builder. I find solutions. I believe. I believe. He remembered a line from Napoleon Hill. Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent benefit. So he stopped pacing and started thinking. The mistake, he realized, wasn't a failure. It was feedback. The distortion gave him an idea, a soft override button, allowing the user to replay affirmations whenever needed. It wasn't a bug, it was a breakthrough. He worked through 3 nights straight. On the 4th day, he stood before Aria Sloan. With a velvet case and 10 working watches, she tried one on dot at the hour. It whispered, you were born to break limits. Aria looked at him. I want 100. Then we go to market. And just like that, the whisper became a murmur. Word of the resolve spread through corners of the internet where motivation met technology. A podcast featured it. A mental health blog called it the simplest mental shift device ever created. One customer said it saved them from quitting their job. Another said it reminded them not to return to an abusive relationship. The world didn't need another gadget. It needed a belief anchor. Elias had built one. But the world also doesn't celebrate quietly. It tests loudly. As orders grew, so did expectations. One review accused him of selling spiritual snake oil. A former client claimed the watch mocked them when they failed to meet a goal. A video went viral criticizing toxic positivity tech. Elias felt the old voice returning, the one that whispered worthlessness. He nearly pulled the plug. But that night, the prototype whispered back at him, the world only doubts those who dare to lead. He stood there, silent. I was never building watches, he thought. I've been building beliefs, starting with my own. That was the moment Elias Gray stopped reacting and started leading. He launched a journal to accompany the watch, guiding users through Napoleon Hill's 6-step self-belief system. He started recording short audio messages for customers, teaching them how to use their own voice as a weapon against doubt. And for the first time, Elias no longer needed his own whisper to move forward. It had already become part of him. It wasn't money that changed Elias Gray, it was reflection. By now, the Resolve had sold over 5,000 units. Testimonials poured in from nurses, students, entrepreneurs, and even a retired firefighter who used the watch as part of his recovery from PTSD. The whisper had gone global. But even success carries shadows in the quiet hours. Elias found himself staring at his reflection, tired, worn eyes, bloodshot from lack of sleep. He looked like a man who had everything to prove and nothing left to give. Why do I still feel empty? The whisper still worked, but he was beginning to tune it out. That scared him more than failure ever had. So, he turned inward. He remembered Hill's words. Faith is a state of mind, which may be induced by He had spent months building belief in others, yet neglected to feed his own spirit. So Elias did something he hadn't done since the beginning. He wrote himself a letter. Not a business plan, not a journal entry. A letter of faith. Dear Elias, you are not lucky, you are aligned. You don't have to prove anything, you already are everything you once prayed to be. This is not about selling watches, it's about teaching people to trust their own voice. Remember what it felt like when you first heard the whisper. Remember why you started, and remember, belief is not about being perfect. It's about returning to the truth even when the noise is louder. With unshakable faith, that one letter, became the foundation of his next step. He began each day by reading it aloud in the mirror, not for performance, but for presence. He began walking to his office instead of driving, repeating phrases to himself along the way. I am the architect of my own belief. My inner voice is my greatest ally. I walk in alignment, not in fear. He even added a new whisper setting to the watch. Users could record their own affirmations. It was no longer Elias speaking to them, it was them speaking to themselves. The results were electric. Sales doubled. But more importantly, belief deepened. One teenage girl recorded, I am not my anxiety. A war veteran whispered, I deserve to live in peace. A single mother said hers to say, my struggle is shaping my strength. And for the first time, Elias didn't feel like a founder. He felt like a servant of something greater than himself. But growth has a way of stirring doubt in those not ready to face their own. A tech influencer published a hit piece titled Motivation Mirage, The Lie Behind the Resolve. They accused Elias of monetizing mental health and creating dependency instead of resilience. The article exploded. Within days, Elias' inbox was flooded with interviews, threats, praise, and confusion. News anchors debated the ethics of affirmation-based devices. A segment ran on national TV. Social media split down the middle. Elias watched it all. Quiet. That night, he looked in the mirror. Do you believe in what you're building? He did. He always had. He sent an open letter to every customer, every critic, every human who ever doubted themselves. In it, he wrote, I do not sell hope. Hope cannot be sold. I simply offer a tool, one that reminds you what you've already forgotten. Your own voice is powerful. My product is not belief, is a reminder to return to it. daily, gently, boldly. Your reality is not reprogrammed by magic. It is reprogrammed by choice, over and over again. I just created a companion. For that journey, whether you love it or leave it, I will keep whispering because someone out there still needs to hear that they matter. The post went viral, not because it was clever, but because it was true. And with that, Elias didn't just win back trust, he deepened it. He wasn't a watchmaker. He was a belief builder. And belief, when nurtured with courage, becomes contagious. Elias Gray had weathered storms of doubt, of criticism, of public scrutiny. But what he faced next was unlike anything he had prepared for. The resolve had begun to gain traction internationally. A mental health startup in Denmark requested distribution rights. A best-selling author referenced the whisper tech in a TEDx talk. A U.S. senator's daughter praised the product in a viral Instagram reel. But growth brings pressure, and pressure tests character. Behind the scenes, his co-founder, Marcus Wantz, the most skeptical voice in the early days, pushed for automation. He wanted mass production, licensing deals, and retail partnerships. We have to scale now, or lose the window, Marcus said. Elias disagreed. He believed that belief couldn't be rushed. Each device wasn't just a product, it was a promise. And promises couldn't be manufactured in haste. It created tension. But the final blow came during a board meeting. Marcus unveiled a plan to integrate AI-based mood detection that would suggest affirmations based on a user's facial expression. The idea at real-time auto-suggestions, removing the need for manual recording. The room clapped, investors smiled. Elias sat silent. Finally, he stood and said, "Auto-suggestion isn't about replacing the self, it's about returning to it. The moment we let a machine tell us who we are, we've lost the very soul of this mission." He walked out. The next day, he resigned as CEO. The media had a field day. Inventor of resolve steps down after internal feud. Customers panicked. Some called it betrayal. Others called him brave. But Elias didn't respond. Not at first. He returned home to the mountain cabin where the whisper had first visited him years before. For days, he said nothing. Did nothing, just listened. To wind, to fire, to silence. It was there, in that stillness, that he found his next whisper, not through a watch, but through his breath. Your voice was never for a product, it was for people. And so, he wrote again. But this time, not code, not affirmation. Book. Title: The Belief You Forgot You Had. Premise: that unshakable faith lives dormant in every person, but noise, trauma, and fear bury it. Through stories, reflections, and exercises, Elias shared his journey from self-doubt to self-trust, guiding readers to awaken their own belief through daily rituals of suggestion and presence. He self-published the book under a small indie label. No hype, no interviews. Just truth. And it exploded. People connected not with the product but with the pain behind it. They saw themselves in Elias, in his cracks, his surrender, his return. Book clubs formed around the world. Counselors began using chapters as prompts in therapy. A school in Brazil started a morning program where children whispered affirmations to themselves. Before class, Elias had ignited something larger than he'd ever imagined. And he realized, you can lose your company, your status, even your reputation, but if you hold on to your conviction, you'll always rebuild. And rebuild he did. He launched the Inner Voice Project, an initiative that provided whisper tech for free to trauma centers, refugee camps, and teen mental health programs. No branding, no profit, just whispers of hope. At a conference for educators, a young girl walked up to Elias with a folded paper in her hand. "I used your book to fight the voice that told me I wasn't enough," she said, tearing up. "Now, I have a new voice. And it says I'm beautiful." Elias took the paper. It read, "Dear me, you are light, even on your darkest days." He cried. And in that moment, he understood. He was never building a business. He was building a movement. One whisper at a time. The world called him a pioneer, a visionary, even a prophet of belief. But Elias Gray knew something the world didn't. The path to unshakable belief is not a picket, is a mirror. And that mirror shows you not what you hope to be, but what you fear you are. Months after the Inner Voice Project went global, Elias received an invitation to speak at a summit in Tokyo, the Human Resilience Conference. Heads of state, trauma psychologists, neuroscientists, and spiritual teachers from around the world were gathering to discuss the question, what does it truly mean to believe in yourself? In a world that keeps trying to convince you not to. Hesitated. He hadn't spoken on stage in nearly 2 years. The last time he did, he had stood as a tech entrepreneur. But now, who was he? A writer? A mentor? A voice? Still, he accepted. The night before his speech, he stood at the rooftop of his hotel, staring down at the lights of the city. Doubt crept in quiet, insidious. What if they've outgrown me? What if I have nothing new to say? What if I never really believed, and just got lucky? And then, as he always had, he whispered back, I believe in the part of me that doubts, because it's the part of me still growing. The next morning, Elias walked to the podium, heart pounding. He began with a pause. No slides, no script. Only truth. There is no one moment where belief becomes permanent. You don't wake up one day immune to fear. Even now, I'm afraid. But what I've learned is this: courage is not the absence of doubt, it is the conversation you have with it. The hall was silent. Then, leaning into the mic, he asked, "When was the last time you told yourself you are worthy and believed it?" And then he waited. A single clap echoed in the back. Then two. Then all. That night, Ilyas's message rippled around the globe. People began filming themselves, whispering their morning affirmations, using the hashtag #VoiceWithin. A man in Kenya said it helped him survive a depression he never talked about. A teenager in Korea said it gave her the strength to walk into school without shame. A mother in Chile said it helped her believe she was still enough after a miscarriage. The movement had taken on a life of its own. And Elias knew it was never about him, it was about all of us. Each human being, wrestling with their reflection. Each heart, seeking a reason to keep going. Each soul, asking, "Am I enough?" And somewhere, across that vast sea of questions, a whisper would always answer, "Yes, you are." That was the mirror. That was the magic. Elias no longer chased success. He chased mirrors. He created schools in underfunded villages where children learned affirmations as early as math. He supported prisons that offered inmates emotional rehabilitation through belief journaling. He partnered with disaster relief centers to offer WhisperTech to survivors of war, and every program began the same way. Before we rebuild the world, we must rebuild belief. One evening, as Elias watched children write letters to their future selves in a village tucked between the hills of Morocco, a teacher asked him, "Elias, what if one day they forget your name?" He smiled. "Then I've finally done my job." Because belief isn't about being remembered, it's about remembering who you are, especially when the world tells you to forget. Years passed, the world had changed. Technology surged forward, culture evolved, economies rose and fell. Yet through it all, the Inner Voice Project remained quiet but powerful. Like an underground river sustaining life in unseen ways. Elias Gray had stepped back from the public eye, not out of exhaustion but out of understanding. He had become the seed. The roots had taken hold in others. He now lived in a quiet coastal town in southern Italy, in a modest home with walls lined in books, letters, and framed drawings from children across the world. He spent his mornings walking along the cliffs, listening to the sea. Not long after his 68th birthday, he received a letter. It came from a young woman named Aria from São Paulo, Brazil. She wrote, "Dear Elias, you don't know me, but 10 years ago, I was in a shelter after escaping a violent home. One night, a counselor handed me a device. It played your voice. You said something I've never forgotten. Even if the whole world walks away from you, your belief must stay." That night, I decided to stay alive. Today, I'm studying psychology. I want to do for others what you did for me. Tears welled. In Elias's eyes, he had once doubted if he could change anything. But belief has no expiration date. One belief, planted in the right soul, could live on for generations. Years later, on a warm autumn day, Elias gave his final talk not at a summit or stadium, but at a local community center. Only 30 people attended. No press, no cameras. Yet, when he stood before them, his words carried the weight of a lifetime. Belief is not a gift you wait for, it's a skill you build. Every time you speak gently to yourself, every time you choose courage over comfort, every time you stay when your past tells you to run, that is belief. And belief doesn't make you perfect. It makes you unstoppable. A small girl raised her hand and asked, "Mr. Elias, what do you do when your belief runs out?" He knelt, smiled, and answered, "Then you borrow some from someone who believes in you, until you believe again." That night, as the stars unfolded across the horizon, Elias sat with a journal in hand and wrote a final message meant for no one, and yet for everyone. "I used to think success was about building something the world would admire, but now I know. Success is building something within yourself the world cannot destroy." He closed the journal, closed his eyes, and let the silence wrap around him like a warm wind. Legacy lives on today. The Whisper Affirmation movement has touched over 90 countries. New leaders have emerged, mentors, teachers, artists, parents, carrying the torch of self-belief. And if you walk into any school, clinic, home, or shelter that embraces the Inner Voice method, you'll find these words on the wall. Even if the whole world walks away from you, your belief must stay. Because belief does not die, it multiplies.